The weather is about to take a turn for the worse as a multi-day severe weather outbreak is looking more and more likely for east, central, and southeastern portions of the country, the likes of which some areas haven't seen in years. We're going to break all of the details down. I'm Jason Pritchard, and I'm glad to have you here at Cold Rain's Weather Channel. Today, we're going to be taking a look at this severe weather threat. It's a very serious situation that appears to be shaping up with the potential for high winds and strong tornadoes over some areas. So we're going to look at all of that, see what's causing it, see what we know in terms of the variables that are coming together to create this event, and still see what's left to be determined as the event starts to unfold over the course of the next couple of days. So we're going to start now. Now we're going to turn our attention to the severe weather threat that we've been talking about for days. As a matter of fact, yesterday I speculated that if things continued on the path that it looked like they were going to continue on, the Storm Prediction Center would probably issue a moderate risk in the next day or two, and certainly they did. They've issued two, one for tomorrow, Friday, and then one for Saturday over portions of the Deep South. And we're going to take a look at this and how all of this unfolds. There are plenty of factors in favor of a severe weather outbreak across the Midwest and Tennessee Valley, and also down into the Deep South and lower Mississippi Valley. So we're going to look at those. Wind hazard is the primary threat for tomorrow, although it looks like potentially on the southern part of this threat, the tornado threat is increasing as well. So we're going to take a look at all of that and see how that comes together. And then on Saturday, it looks like there's the potential for a rather significant tornado outbreak across Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and maybe spreading into parts of Georgia. So we're going to look at all of this and see what dynamics are coming together to create this. Many of what we've, the same as what we've talked about the last couple of days. So starting out today, this is tomorrow's outlook from the Storm Prediction Center, and we've got a big moderate risk here, an enhanced risk around that from Iowa down to Mississippi, and then a slight risk that surrounds that, and a marginal risk for potential severe weather outside of those areas. Now, looking at the tornado threat specifically, a 10% area of tornadoes. This is 10% chance of a tornado occurring within 25 miles of a point, and that's a pretty 10% is a pretty significant risk, and then it's hatched as well, which means that if any tornadoes do spin up, they could be significant tornadoes. We're talking EF2 or higher. The wind conditions are just that favorable. Now, looking at the wind threat itself, you've got a big hatched area here of a significant gust threat. So as this storm system organizes and all of this convection, this thunderstorm activity forms a line, we'll see it in a minute. It'll kind of bow out, and it's going to translate a lot of that wind energy that's very, very anomalously strong, actually, in the upper and lower levels of the atmosphere down to the ground. And so you could see gusts upwards of 70 to 80 miles per hour in spots. And so to that end, the highest risk looks right in here to be eastern Missouri and western Illinois, where you've got a 45% chance of wind damage. So we're looking at a widespread wind event. If things hold, I wouldn't even be surprised to see a high risk pop up in this area here. So really, really strong winds. Hail is possible too. The hatched area is a chance of hail larger than 2 inches in diameter. So these are going to be very strong storms. They're going to be fast moving. They're going to race off. On the southern part of this threat down here toward Kentucky and Tennessee, maybe even back into Arkansas and Mississippi, there is the chance that some of the activity could break apart and not be so linear, meaning you have supercells, and if supercells develop and they're able to remain isolated, they're going to really do a good job taking advantage of the environment and rotating and creating, efficiently creating tornadoes. So we're going to have to watch that and see if that unfolds, but that is a risk that seems to be increasing. Now on Saturday, that risk shifts off to the east. So you've got a slight risk all the way up here into Lake Erie, all the way covering much of the Tennessee and Ohio valleys down to the Deep South, with a moderate risk. This is really, really, really rare for this SPC to issue a moderate risk 3 days out. So this is their day 3 outlook. Excuse me. And you've got this big moderate risk area for a potential significant tornado outbreak. And we'll look at the parameters coming together to make that happen. But do not let your guard down. If you know anybody in this area here, make sure they're paying attention, because this has the potential to be something like we haven't seen in years. And I'm not trying to freak anybody out or cry wolf or anything, but the parameters are very concerning that are coming into play down here in southern Mississippi and Alabama. And if we look at that, so we're seeing a 45% chance of severe weather here. It doesn't break out tornado, hail, or wind threats yet. That'll happen tomorrow. But in the meantime, you've got a big area of 30% or more, and the hatched area means significant hazards are possible. Winds over 65 knots, which is about 70 miles an hour, and hail greater than 2 inches in diameter, and potential for tornadoes that are EF2 or higher. So that's what we're looking at for day 2, which is Saturday into Sunday. Then Sunday into Monday, the threat shifts east, and we still have to see what kind of shape the line's in, what kind of instability we have, what time of day that line comes through. There's a little bit of variance in the modeling, but that is your general outline of the threat. So we'll pay more attention to that in the coming days. Now, let's get on in to see what's causing all of this to happen. And you can see this big area of low pressure, that trough that we looked at on satellite is crashing in. This is Friday morning. And so Friday morning, this low is really taking shape here in Colorado, Nebraska, and it is going to deepen rapidly. Look at it, 975, 975, and it shoots on. It even gets a little deeper, 974, 973. Very, very, very strong. You can tell these green colors. We looked at this yesterday. These are below average pressure. How much below average, the deeper the green goes, the more below average that pressure field is for this time of year. So you can see this is extremely strong and anomalous, and this is going to create all kinds of wind energy in the upper levels of the atmosphere and the lower levels of the atmosphere. Even at the ground, you're going to get a large area of high winds, potentially damaging winds, even outside of thunderstorms. And we'll look at all of that here in a minute. But big gusts. So if you know people that aren't paying attention to the weather, tap on the shoulder and say, listen, you got to check out Cold Rain's Weather World, man. We've got all of it covered here, and we'll keep people in the loop as all of this unfolds. So that's just going to continue to move into the Great Lakes. And what's happening that you're not seeing is a big piece of energy is coming in behind this, and it's acting to sort of slow this whole thing down. So instead of everything scooting off to the east rapidly, this thing is crawling, because you've got more energy that's just deepening this trough that's now centered over the central portion of the country. And it's also acting to create this secondary area of low pressure that we've been watching as well. And so all of that's coming together to really slow this thing down, create a lot of additional wind. This new area of low pressure here, and this secondary jet that's coming in, is going to bring lift into the deep south and moisture out of the Gulf. And so it really sets the stage for a severe weather outbreak down south as kind of part 2 rolls around on Saturday into Sunday. So all of this will eventually, if we just go ahead and put this into motion, we're looking at Saturday evening into Sunday, overnight Sunday. There's a cold front somewhere in this area here. And so that's all going to push off the coast by the time we get into Monday into Tuesday. And so we'll quiet down for a bit, but hint, it's not going to last too long. Now, at the surface, we talked about this for the last few days, and we'll talk about it again today because it's very important. Wind gusts at the surface are going to be very strong. We're already seeing high wind watches and warnings and wind advisories up. That will continue to expand for much of the country. And if we look here, check this out. So Friday morning into Friday afternoon, look at the explosion of wind across New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska. These oranges are 50s, into the deep oranges are 60s, even 70. You're going to see potential gusts to 80 miles per hour in some of these locations. Now, not everybody's going to get a gust to 80, but gusts to 60 are still strong. So be very, very vigilant in Oklahoma, Texas, even into Missouri, and back into Mexico, New Mexico rather, and Nebraska, Kansas. Just watch out, because things are going to be blowing around. Hold on to your hats out there and everything else you can grab onto, because it's going to blow away. And as you can see, this just expands east. Again, this map, we could show this map a couple of different ways. This is an accumulated gust. So essentially it's like, looking at an accumulated precipitation map. This over here has already happened, And that just shows you what the max gusts were in any one spot over the last time frame that we're running this map through, and we're running it through the whole entire time period. So these are accumulated wind gusts. You can see how this plays out over the course of the entire storm. As we get through Monday, it all moves off the coast. But look at this wide area that has the potential to see high winds. Not everybody's going to see 60-mile-an-hour winds, but even some of these red areas, sometimes these wind maps are overdone. But what this does is it shows you that at the surface, even outside of thunderstorms, you're going to see strong winds over much of the area. And that's what these strong mid-latitude cyclones do, is they produce very strong winds over a wide area. And that's what's happening here. So greens are gusts into the 30s and 40s. I guarantee you we're going to see wind advisories and maybe even some high wind watches and warnings expand eastward as we go through the next couple of days. So that's your general wind threat. Now, up in the upper levels, up around 18 to 20,000 feet, you've got this storm system. This is what's fueling this. Look here. We're starting off on Friday morning, and we're already seeing a pretty strong jet. This is called a jet max. So this is the upper level winds. And you need to understand these elements so that you can understand, if you're looking to understand weather, what's driving things at the surface. So when you have these big maxes like this, you get lift in certain quadrants of this. So as this rotates around, you're getting a lot of lift through these areas. And so look, this trough's already kind of taking on a negative tilt. You can kind of see that northwest to southeast kind of position here with this trough. And that's just going to act to really tighten up the circulation of the surface low and draw in moisture out of the Gulf. And so if we go on and put this into motion here, you can see what that jet max does. Look, it strengthens. This red area is 125, 130 knots. That's somewhere in the neighborhood of 140, 150, 155 mile an hour of wind speed up here in the upper levels. And you can already see this multi-contour upper level low tightening up as it's creating the surface low down at the surface. You get evacuation of air in the column way up high. You have to replace that air with air coming in from underneath, and that rising motion gives you lots of clouds, lots of strong lift, creating showers, thunderstorms. And if you have wind energy like this, that wind energy can exacerbate the degree of severe weather that you have. And so that rotates on around, and it weakens a little bit as the low strengthens at the surface. It's still pretty strong. And then look what happens down here in the south. You have this secondary jet max that's coming in. It just sort of reinvigorates this whole trough. Instead of everything sliding east, it's just sort of acting to reinvigorate this trough. And you can see that here. So see this big area here. Again, very strong. That's going to translate east and help to spawn a second area of jet intensity here, along with a low pressure somewhere in this area. So we're going to get a second low pressure forming as we go into Saturday, into Sunday, and that's going to move up this way. We've been looking at this. This will help to keep the low-level wind fields favorable for tornadoes and even enhance the low-level wind fields and transport moisture out of the Gulf, all of which you need if you are looking at a severe weather outbreak. The one thing that could be the fly in the ointment and save the day for a major tornado outbreak with really violent tornadoes is, as this moves in, depending on when it moves in, it could create enough lift overall to create a bunch of showers and convective activity before Saturday afternoon, which is when the main threat would happen in the Alabama, Mississippi area. That would work over the atmosphere, remove some of the instability, and it would create an environment so that supercells would be less likely to form and be less strong. So we're going to have to watch that. That is the one fly in the ointment. It's looking less likely that's going to happen, but it is still a possibility that is worth watching. And then as we get on into Sunday afternoon, this starts to shift east. You can see the big area of upper level winds that are strong. So still have a severe threat with that line as it advances to the east on Sunday. So that's what's going on in the upper levels. Everything's out and gone, and we're breathing a sigh of relief by Monday evening into Tuesday. And now look here. So this is our 850 jet. This is 5,000 feet off the ground. If you want severe weather, you want to have a strong low-level jet. Nobody wants severe weather, but if you are looking to forecast it, you're going to need to see strong low-level winds often as well. And so as we look Friday morning, Look at this jet. So this thing begins to really crank here. We're looking at 70 knot jet up here. So that's really strong winds, very anomalously strong. It surrounds that. So this is all fueling the first round of severe weather. This is going to produce a squall line. That squall line is going to zip through. It's going to translate all of those winds down to the ground. That's why we're looking at such a strong wind threat up here in Missouri and into Illinois and parts of the Midwest. So that's going to move out, and then a new jet is going to get reinvigorated as that trough swings in. And so we're looking at Saturday into Sunday, the high winds over here. Let's just roll this back just a little bit. So you can see this renewed jet in response to the upper level jet is building in here over Mississippi and Alabama. This is where we're really concerned as this wind shear increases with height, the wind turning in the low levels, all of this overlaps in this area. Dew points coming in, rich moisture. So we're seeing a threat here, but this jet kind of strengthens and moves off into Tennessee and up into West Virginia, and just it really translates from Georgia to South Carolina into North Carolina. So the threat keeps going here with this cold front. And again, we'll have to see what kind of instability we have to work with. You can have all the wind upstairs you want, but if you can't get convection to develop, deep convection, it can't make use of it. So we're not. We're going to have to see how that plays out. So as we get into the Sunday, Monday time frame, and then everything scoots out. Now, dew points. We've looked at dew points several times. We didn't look at them yesterday, but we're going to look at them again today because some of the models are now showing a little bit more return flow out of the Gulf, and you get a larger warm sector of warm, moist air, which is needed for thunderstorms. And so look at this. This low begins to spin up over the central plains here. Moisture surges in. That other low that we saw in satellite that's working through the southeast today, that sort of put a cap on the moisture return as it's moved through. Winds out of the north behind it keep the moisture down. If that hadn't been here, we'd really see dew points surging in. We could have had much more in the way of tornadic activity even with tomorrow's event. But look at this. So dew points are coming in. These are dew points around the 60-degree mark. 60. Once you get in the 60s, you're starting to get real moisture in. Even though it's not all the way up the column, it's at the surface, and that could fuel good surface cape. And so we're looking at this. So dew points come in ahead of that front, then the second system starts to develop, and you really see those dew points surge in here. So this is the GFS model. Some of the other models bring this, bring the dew points in a little bit more robustly, and some don't, but this is probably a good middle ground. And then you see dew points surging in across the southeast here and up into the mid-Atlantic ahead of the system as it works in on Sunday. So backing this up, we're looking at Friday into Saturday afternoon. This is when we're really looking at the threat, Saturday afternoon and evening here in Alabama and Mississippi into Georgia. So Saturday overnight, we're getting enough moisture to create enough instability is the bottom line. And so that's sometimes a little bit of instability is all you need, but we're looking at some places down here having quite a bit of instability, something that you might see out in the Great Plains and not really all that common in the Southeast. So we're going to watch how that translates out, and then everything gets out of here, as I've said before. And here's your CAPE. So this is the GFS's idea of what CAPE looks like. So Friday morning, we're starting to see a good instability. This is anywhere from 500 up to 1,500 joules per kilogram of CAPE. That's plenty to get the job done when you've got the kind of wind energy we're looking at. And then if we get on into Friday evening into Saturday morning, look at this. Now you've got a really good surge of low-level moisture feeding in over the lower Mississippi Valley. And look at those CAPE numbers. So Saturday morning, we've got plenty of CAPE to work with in Louisiana, Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi. Really, look at this. These numbers are basically 2,500 joules of CAPE. That's pretty strong CAPE, and you've got strong wind shear. This is going to be a significant event down here. Even if you don't get tornadoes, you're going to still see some wind for sure with these levels of instability, and that relaxes a little bit as it goes to the east, but you've still got enough to create plenty of convection and strong storms. So those are your CAPE values. Now, looking at how this all translates out at the surface, what are we looking at in terms of the actual, what might the radar look like, for example? So as we get in here to Friday morning, we're going to look at, and then roll into Friday afternoon, we're starting to see this is around, I don't know, around 3 or 4 p.m., somewhere in that range, 3 or 4 or 5 on Friday afternoon. And look, so it comes, this line starts to develop, 973 low. You've got a big squall line starting to develop here in looks like Nebraska into Iowa, Missouri. And then that thing just takes off. Look at all of this. So this is just a very vigorous bow echo, almost like a derecho almost, although it's not going to travel for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles and move across the entire country. It still is going to bring significant wind. And look at that. It really congeals as we get on into the evening, Friday evening. And then off we go, 8 p.m. Friday, well up into Iowa here, crossing into Illinois. So you've got a very big wind threat, even some wind back in here, and snow developing on the backside. It's going to be blizzard conditions, even there's not going to be a lot of snow. Heavy snow with high winds in spots, and so it's going to make driving hazardous out there. And then this works off, eventually it gets on into the lakes and works off into the east and breaks apart as we go through Saturday into Sunday. And so the southern part of that, if we're looking here at, this is Friday evening about 8 o'clock, watch what happens to the southern part of this line. This is just a different depiction of the same line. You've got some broken areas here, and so instead of a big contiguous squall line, you're going to see potentially this break apart. And if that does, you're going to have segments, line segments, or little bowing segments, or you're going to have individual supercells. And there's so much rotation in the atmosphere down here that these things are going to rotate quickly and be efficient tornado makers if they can break apart into these little line segments, or you have supercell or just individual thunderstorms. They're going to rotate. You have the potential for tornadoes down here in Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, lower Illinois, and so that just moves on, and you can see the kind of the depiction of that, and then it recongeals into a line, is forcing, it feels some forcing maybe from that secondary low. But gonna have to watch this area Friday evening into the overnight hours for tornado development. Even though the upper part of the line you could see a spin up, but mostly you're going to have that's where your big wind threat's going to be. Now switching gears one more time here, just a couple of things to note, that a couple of quick variables to look at. So looking at the deep south threat on Saturday, as we get on into Friday evenings, and then we get into Saturday morning, look at this. This is your energy helicity index. So Saturday morning, these values of 2 or what you want to see, higher than that for strong, for starting to get into strong tornado territory here. And so as this moves on forward, look what happens over Mississippi and Alabama as we go through time in the day on Saturday into Saturday night. These values are more than enough to produce strong to violent tornadoes. So you've got values, if we go back and hover over it, look at this, values around 4, maybe even greater than that. That's strong tornado territory, and that will diminish as we go through time. But conditions in this entire area here need to be watched for tornado development, and strong tornadoes at that, when we get into Saturday afternoon. The one thing that I talked about before, if we get a lot of messy activity overturning the atmosphere before this threat takes hold, you're going to see potentially a lesser tornado threat, but it's looking less likely that that's going to happen. So we're going to pay attention as we go through the next day or so to see how this plays out. And the last variable here I wanted to show you was this, what's called the significant tornado parameter. Anything when you start to get in here 3s, 4s, these values are extremely high. And this translate, if we go back, look at this. You even got some values over 5. I mean, this is just insane. This is lots and lots of energy and configured just right to create a tornado threat. So all of this comes through Saturday evening. And if we go back here and we click, we can actually see a sounding. Look at this. If we click here, near Tupelo, look at this sounding. Now, we're not going to get into soundings all that much right now, but this is a hodograph. This big sickle shape hodograph shows you turning in the lowest levels of the atmosphere. This is indicative of strong tornadoes. You've got good shear up through a good vertical shear, and even it tells you the possible hazard is a strong tornado. And if we look down here, over. Let's see if we can yeah, see this part. This is a sounding. We don't need to get into that too much. It just shows you the temperature profile and the moisture profile of the atmosphere. So you've got some good, like 68-degree dew point, lots of CAPE to work with. As a matter of fact, our CAPE, our surface CAPE is just over 2,000. Our mixed layer CAPE is over 2,000. Incredible instability, along with good lapse rates, which is cooling with height, and good turning. Look at these values: 500, over 500 low-level shear. You may not know what that means. That just means that when you have this these helicity values over 500, over 200 is tornado territory. Over 500 is just extreme values, and so this is why we're so concerned. The parameters are coming together to create a potential tornado outbreak here over portions of Mississippi and Alabama. So we're going to have to watch that. Keep your friends and family in the loop. If you got plans, maybe consider changing those. Stay tuned here. Stay subscribed to the channel. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. Get other people to look and subscribe, and we'll make sure that you're in the loop and you understand all of this stuff. You can really get complex with all these different severe weather variables and go into great detail and make your eyes bleed out of your head. But I don't want to do that here. I want you to make sure you know what you need to know and know what I'm looking at. And I try to explain that in a way that hopefully makes some sense without making your eyes glaze over too badly. So, but those are the things the reasons that I'm concerned, and the reasons the SPC is concerned, and the reason many of the local National Weather Service offices, I was reading some of the discussions, and the language is pretty strong in those. So you can do that for yourself, but it's worth reading. And then as we get into the day 4 threat, that squall line looks like it's coming through here Saturday evening, overnight Sunday. That's going to push into the western Carolinas, into Georgia and Virginia, break apart a little bit, and then the heating of the day will reinvigorate that as it comes east. And there could be a heavy rain threat in here. It just depends on how quickly this line pushes east. There's some indications that maybe it slows down a little bit, but we'll have to see how that goes. Different models kind of show different things on that. We'll deal with that as we get a little closer to it. So that's your main severe weather kind of outlook and your threat for what we're looking at over the next couple of days. If anything changes, you can follow me on Twitter at Real Cold Rain. I'm always posting there if anything interesting comes up or some changes need to be made. But I'll be back again tomorrow with another outlook here. In the meantime, quick peek at the long range. Carbon copy of yesterday's long range. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but look at this. This system pushes off. This is Monday. And then we get into Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Look, another system coming in, big, strong system, snow on the backside, line of storms. The Europeans not too impressed with the moisture return. So we'll see if it ends up being a non-event, or if we can, we see any rain out of it. But just one system after another. Then we get on in here into Saturday, what are we looking at? March the 23rd, March 24th, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Now, this is a more interesting system in terms of moisture return. You've got a big system in the plains again, starting to see some snow in the north, but temperatures are warming up, so we're going to see less and less snow as we go on. But look at this down here. Again, big severe weather outbreak. Again, we're looking at Sunday the 23rd through Monday the 24th. Just another weather maker. And then another one comes in right on its heels. And when these things come in too close to each other, it limits the moisture return. But again, you don't need to focus on dates. You don't need to focus on strength. All you need to take away from all of this is just that it's an active pattern. Another system's coming into the west. One after another is just going to come right on in over the next several weeks. And so this is a March to remember for sure. Our total precipitation over the next couple of weeks, feet of snow in the upper elevations out here in the west, inches of rain in between. Storms track across, they redevelop over here in the lee of the Rockies, and you get larger rainfall amounts in the east with lesser rainfall amounts where you really need it out here in New Mexico and Oklahoma and Texas. Hopefully the pattern will begin to change a little bit to where you guys can get some rain out there. But all of these systems are going to track across. They're all going to bring heavy rain, winds, and potential for severe weather. So we're going to have to stay on guard over the next couple of weeks. And that sort of wraps things up. Just here, take a quick look at the temperature profile. As you would guess, because the pattern is the pattern and it's not changing, it doesn't appear to be changing anytime soon. the temperature pattern is going to be consistent as well. And so we're putting this into motion. These are 5-day averages every time I advance this. So we're not going to get into exactly what the temperatures are. You know what averages are for your region. Generally 20s and 30s up here for March. That warms up as the month advances along. 40s and 50s in the central, 60s and 70s along the southern tier. And so we're looking at anywhere from 4 to 10 degrees above normal, potentially even more than that at times over the next 2 weeks. Even the west starts to warm up. So that is an orange map, folks. That is above normal. Above normal in the spring can lead to severe weather. So that is where we are. That's what's going on. Follow me on Twitter, Real Cold Rain. I post on TikTok too, but nothing I don't post here. So, follow me over there if you want. But let people know about this channel. Subscribe to it. Leave a comment. I'm always, I'm always happy to hear any comments that you have about the show, questions, suggestions. I'll respond to each and every one of them. If you have questions about the weather, we'll respond to those too. Prayer requests are super important as well. If there's something going on in your life, I'm happy to pray over anything for you. I want to be there for you. I want our community to kind of be there for each other as well. And so we just want to build that. So we're up to 186 maybe subscribers, 85 subscribers, something like that. I can't thank you enough, and really appreciate it. And this is fun for me, and I'm happy to do this. I like to inform you about what's going on, and hopefully you're having a good time too. We'll do a Cold Rain's Weather World again, in the next few days, where we'll do some of the fun segments and kind of things like that. That's what we do on that show. But today, because there's so much going on, so much severe activity out there, I wanted to get right into the weather and stick with it mostly, and not have a lot of fun extracurricular activities with this, just because it's so long. So anyway, that's it for the day. I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon. I'll see you back tomorrow, and we'll talk soon. Take care.